Hi everyone and welcome back to Switch Up, and it is so close now to the 12 days of Switch Up where we're giving away that Nintendo Switch OLED. I'm getting excited, so excited in fact, that I may or may not have hidden a couple of codes in this episode for one of my favourite games of all time, Phoenotopia. Now the caveat is they're Australian codes. Why on earth would I do that? No one else wanted them. But seriously, no one else wanted them. With that said though, we will be giving away copies in other regions in one of our 12 days of Switch Up videos, and it is going to be just an all-round good time had by all. Good for us because we will actually be taking 12 days off during that time because all of these will be pre-recorded, and hopefully the topics as well will be quite good for you guys. Voting for the best games of the year is going to commence soon as well. If you missed the Discord channel, there was voting over there. There was some really surprising choices. I'll pop a link to that in the description. This is like the food reference Christmas special, because these games are cheap. But are they cheerful? Well, let's find out. Starting off then, we've got the beautiful Sakuna of Rice and Ruin, which is 35% off. This one is available in the US regions at the moment, matching its lowest ever price sale, and essentially it's Rice Paddy Farmer the game. If that doesn't immediately grab you by the ricey bits, then you must understand that it's one of the highest scores Glen has ever given out on the channel, and I'll pop a link to his full review. It just captures something beautiful about Japanese culture, and then it mixes it up with those strange action sequence segments. It has its flaws for sure, but there's something there, there's something special. And at the moment it's £19.49 in the US, and I believe there's a physical of this one as well, so if you're not in the US regions you may be able to find it slightly cheaper. Then we hop, skip and jump over to Moonlighter, the complete edition, 80% off until the 29th of December. And this probably has one of the best soundtracks of any game that I've ever reviewed on Switch. I think this scored 20 out of 20 for audio, and it's just delightful. Now the complete edition obviously includes all of the DLCs, new bosses, new runs, and you essentially have to run your little shop from the town. Now in a sequel, I would love for them to do a bit more work with that town, or a new town, or I don't know how it's going to work, but a little bit more expansion. They could go some of the sim life element route as well, you know, having you have a family and stuff like that. I think that would be nice. It's tough as nails. It absolutely rinsed me a few times, but for just £5.19, you know what that is, don't you? It's a Barjan. Oh, and also apologies. There's someone who listens to this video who's not an English speaker, which probably a lot of you aren't. And he said, "Oh, I didn't realise that bargain was supposed to be pronounced Barjan." So he started using Barjan in normal conversations, and I can't imagine that's gone down too swimmingly. So please, bargain is the real word. I'm just an idiot. Jumping over then from one 11-bit Studios Marvel, we've got another one, and it's Children of Mortar, again the complete edition. This has 1 or 2 player co-op, and I think the co-op is massively underrated. It's a very fast-paced experience. It looks a little Diablo-like. Combat is like really enjoyable, but it's not the most visceral you'll ever see. There's a lot of backtracking, shooting enemies, running away. That's why it kind of gives me that Diablo vibe. But they included a whole brand new mode, which I dubbed Hades mode, completely free of charge, new content that adds in a roguelite element that's very akin to that game. Now at the moment, this complete edition is just £8.40, that's 65% off. What's that, like a third the price of a decent tikka masala with pilau rice and a keema naan bread. Oh man, does anyone actually Google these things that doesn't know what I'm talking about? And then everyone else is like, man, I'm getting hungry. Definitely don't sleep on Hot Shot Racing. This one launched with quite a bit of rubber banding, but it was an excellent arcade racer, but has since seen numerous patches to add new content, as well as to improve the overall gameplay formula. And it features 1 to 4 player split screen, which is amazing, very good for Christmas if you're going to have relatives over, but it also has 2 to 8 player online modes. I can't remember if it was there at launch, but there's a cops and robbers mode as well, one that focuses on just drifting, and the whole thing obviously runs at 60 frames per second. I say obviously, it's not obvious at all on Switch. But it runs at 60 FPS, is silky smooth, and an absolute bargain for that price. While we're on the subject, it's worth noting that there is actually a little known physical of this release. However, I'm not sure if it's a cartridge or a code in the box, but that's only usually about a tenner on Amazon, so it's worth checking out if you're a physical collector. It all clocks into a reasonable 3.3 gigs, and for completionists, you're looking at about 20 hours. We're going to jump over to a real bargain then, and it's beautiful Desolation, which I believe is set in South Africa, but it's 95% off at the moment until like the middle of December, taking it down to just 89 pence, less than a bag of Haribo Star Mix. That is a crazy cheap price. But what's it about? Well, essentially this is very much like an old school adventure game. If you ever played old adventures on PC, don't be mistaken for thinking it's a top-down RPG, because it really isn't. There's predefined text elements where you answer, you can do different dialogue choices and things like that. But there's also some like set puzzles. It's more linear than it looks at first glance. It's also, in honesty, not as good as it looks at first glance, and I would say for a sales pickup, 89p is where I would be tossing my coins. So if you have coins like Eshop coins to spend, I'd say this is a nice place to put them, but temper your expectations. It's definitely like a 6 or 7 out of 10 style experience. Still good, but not great. In the US though, you have something that I think is a bit special and is certainly a hidden gem. It's that remaster of Eternal Castle. Now this is very much like an old Spectrum game almost, / old Amiga game. If you remember things like Flashback, those classic adventure titles that were brutally difficult, Eternal Castle is very much like a mishmash of those, using an old game as a basis but updating quite a few things. While it might seem slightly more expensive at about $9.99, it's probably the epitome of a hidden gem on Switch. We played it but we weren't able to review it because we had no time left, and I think you'll know just by the visuals on screen and the overall styling and what it's going for if this is going to be one that appeals to you, but it definitely won't be for everyone. There is also a multiplayer aspect to this that I have never tried. So it says 1 or 2 players. I'm not sure how that works, if it's co-op or what, but if you know, let us know down in the comments. We jump over to Golf Club Wasteland, which is 90% off until December the 26th. This one's only in the EU region, and it's a crazy price. That's easily its cheapest ever price, less than £1. I do like these games that take a sport that potentially could be less exciting. Now, don't get me wrong, golf is alright, but then they create like an RPG out of it. It essentially tells the story of humanity's fall, and it creates like a physics-based platformer out of it almost. The game's split into 3 different modes, so you can play on casual or like a more story-based mode, or there's challenge mode, which goes without saying, and then there's one that's essentially targeting very good players called Iron Mode. Now, I haven't actually tried Iron Mode because I'm a bit of a wuss, but challenge mode offers a decent level of challenge, and it's very unique. A very good game. I think this is another one that's potentially flown under the radar of a lot of people. Just 1.3 gigabytes, and it won't take you long. You're looking at about 3 to 5 hours to finish it. I was racking my brains as to why I knew Blade of Darkness. We mentioned it on the recent Cubic sales video, and they released this re-release of an old game called Blade of Darkness, and I was like, why do I know that name? And then I remembered, it's Severance, isn't it? Severance Blade of Darkness. I played this way back in the day. It's a great game, and I had absolutely no clue they were re-releasing it. Now, what I loved about it as a younger person was that it was so brutal. Like, it was quite gory for its time, with some very cool attacks and different combos that you can perform. But as I was watching the trailer, it was almost like when you have like memories of games that are almost like a dream. because either you were so young when you were first playing them, or it was just so long ago. A bit like that game, It Came From the Desert. I remember playing that on the ZX Spectrum. Goodness me, nostalgia. So yeah, this one is a very cool world. It is dated in terms of its controls and its general look, but actually it holds up surprisingly well. I wish we'd had more games like this brought over to the Switch. Maybe something like that Dark Messiah of Might and Magic. Do you remember that? That was another classic. There you go, Cubic, bring that across. But this one, not bad at all. Reasonable price, 40% off at the moment, taking it down to around about £8 and just 1.4 gigs. Probably the genre I miss the most from my PC days are strategy titles. So whenever one comes across to the Switch, I try my very best to at least play it. Now, we were able to review Railway Empire, and I thought it was great. Essentially goes all the way back to the start of when Railway began and puts you in the role of trying to connect up all the cities over this large map. Now, as any person that likes trains at all know, that's all well and good, but you want to be able to actually see the trains and ride on them, and you can actually zoom right down and go on these routes yourself. And yes, I know it sounds a bit nerdy, but it's very cool. Now, there's also a rival aspect as well, so eventually there'll be other companies vying for the same routes, and the AI is actually reasonably smart, because you can obviously only build one railway track in a certain place, and they will try and cut you off, and then you'll find yourself like building roads over the top and building bridges and things like that. So yeah, Railway Empire, really good, 50% off. Still reasonably expensive at £17.99, but as you'll know, strategy fans, you can spend hundreds of hours playing these types of games. Of course, it's not as good with a controller, but I didn't really have any problems once I got to grips with that. To finish off then, this is like a mention, an honourable mention. It's not a hidden gem at all, but this is my GG on patching the game and then putting free content in. I'm gonna give you a shout out of the week, which really has a really has a ring to it, doesn't it? And Ultra Age, the developers, they did a good job to start with. It wasn't in a bad state, but they've just released a massive free expansion for it, which essentially adds in, again, I know this word is not what some people want to hear, but it adds in a free roguelite element to the game, which is a lot of new content, new enemies to fight, and you've got to see how far you can get and how much you can survive. That's really cool. Now, bearing in mind, you've still got the single player experience, which is fully story driven and looks much better than a lot of the other games we've had on Switch, and comes from a really small team. I mean, it's very commendable, so I'm commending them. The only thing is, it ends today, so you have maybe like 17 hours to get it if you're in the US. If you're in the UK, then maybe it's just a little wish list one for us. But yeah, not too shabby at all. I do like doing it when the big sales end, because you really have to look through and find the stuff that's genuinely worthwhile let's be honest, the eShop is full of so much junk. And we've got a couple to recap that are still on sale. You've got things like Lego Star Wars, the Skywalker Saga, the Deluxe Edition. That's a mouthful. The Deluxe Edition, which is 50% off until December the 5th. Probably one of my favourite co-op games to play with the kids. That's 1 or 2 players. Huge open worlds. You can jump from planet to planet. That's $29.99 at half price. And it obviously includes all the DLC. The Hidden Gem from last week, which is Unsighted. That's 40% off. Brilliant game. If you're a fan of Crosscode, it's like that in that you can't let the art style determine what you think of this one. You need to play it and go, oh my goodness, that's amazing. And this one is very good. That's only available in the American regions. Assassin's Creed, the Anniversary Mega Bundle in the American regions is 55% off. That includes every Assassin's Creed game that's come out on Switch. And then obviously Skyrim, that's half price. That's got hundreds and hundreds of hours of content in. I think I've spent about 300 to 400 hours now, and it's well worth it, and recently received a patch. So that is it for this week. Remember, 12 Days of SwitchUp starts very soon. Make sure you've got your notifications on. We want to give out free games. We want to give out the Switch OLED, and do save yourself 10% on any of these titles if you want, using code SwitchUp over at switchup.gg, and we get a little kickback from Nintendo. Happy days. Loads of people seem to use it. I think last month was our biggest ever month on there, and we are humbled that anyone would even listen to us, so nice one. Thanks to all of you, and as always, for all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers, guys. See ya!